ourselves faster. Hey Josh, are y'all gonna upload it?
Yeah.
Like pretty quickly?
Within a week.
Do you want
It takes me like 3.5, 4 hours to get it. So,
Would y'all like to be on the email chain? We're in the midst of a race war, 21st century xenophobia, racialized white nationalists hate to descend into order and modernity that re-embodied the inheritance of 1619 and manifests as the direct commercial sales and foreign military sales of arms are forced an internal debate over the expansion of white humanity and all its hypocrisy. The global promise of white being determines the coordinates of an always unfolding violence already steeped in an edifice of accessibility. Narratives of racial progress ignore the pre-established time for progress is insurgently tied to white humanity. This established middle state cards in the theater racial issue building that facilitates movements in sometimes post-racial civil rights, multiculturalism, research of white nationalism, post-racial liberalism, law and order, the war on drugs and war, the infrastructure of tolerance and repression that are never finding separable sale of weapons is the ascendancy of white logistics and supremacy inherently armed anxieties over the loss of a good life fuels armed cells and recruitments of white nationalists which intensifies alienation, global genocide. The sale of weapons is not neutral but a waste and retreats the logistics to disavows itself via subjects and via DCS FMS. The smooth flowing globalized system of white logistics is what connects and creates indestructible linkage of DCS FMS. The fluctuating weapon systems that oscillate between international and domestic is not an isolated instance but the very oscillation discussions of armed cells that point to an external violence while ignoring the racial terror that forms intimate violence within the system. This is the social militarization and transformation of black and brown communities into battlefields of the race war. The race war is not just out there, but in here. Debate is a microcosm of the race war. Their so-called neutrality, fairness, predictability, stasis, clash, topic education are not ideological means of entry in which the protocols are not a negotiation of competing models, but are predetermined by logistics of white being that seeks to fix those that need to be fixed. Limits are not just limits on the topic, but practices of the community clashes. This debate, the refusal to invite certain teams to round robins, black debaters getting the cops called on them because their music is too loud, all prove the uniquest question of race. The race war being inseparable of the internal debate is debate as an activity, increasing police militarization, illegally sanctioned murder of black population, the shuttling of people into camps and separation of the families at the border, the ongoing disavowal of black and brown scholarship in Western academia all proves that techniques of racialization are inherently tied to the theories and methods one advances. Will be very clear. Everything in the social is either racist or anti-racist. There's no in-between and compromise. This debate is a question of research and aligning with the anti-racist research is a prior ethical question. The adjudication of this internal debate is no different than the logistical enforcement of arms sales policy as a corrective, but in this blur is the possibility of a horizon, one that problematizes the need for policy, one that is misimagined yet disimagined, echo that asks the question, what would happen if the fleeting moment of anti-state terror were socialized against its then congruence? Thus, we affirm militant preservation as a reduction of direct commercial sales and foreign military sales from the United States. Here is an opportunity to alter the protocols of the race war. Rodriguez and 19, the echo shutters the anti-colonial plantation, burning violence, redemption, and symbolic genesis of white humanity centered. This is what exposes the perceptive arrogance of white humanity, universal, daring to approach warns that mankind towards this, foster differentiation, one that speaks collective genius, and imagine a future practice of mankind's obsolescence and what would happen if fleeting a moment of anti-state terror were socialized against its congruence and proto. Just have flexible, here's an opportunity to alter protocols war, consider the recent militant reference to activities to the limits of internal American debate, blurring confession of human life as a source of echo and voluntary habits of blurring outside mankind to live in this world to be the way that intimately familiar with the perpetual condition of war consciousness. There remains a persistent debate to cross these counterpositions until limits the horizon of fulfillment. The terms of the internal debate can only allow for the gesture of concession, the noting of police to say equitably a reordering of suppressed horizons, the open interpretation which cries the problem of political horizon be posed in the first assassinated problem. Perhaps there is a solution to the problem in ingenious re-articulation of the dilemma, mismatch, disimagined horizon that folds and knowledge of adjudication. The internal debate occurs in general to be able to the enforcement of culture, judicial, military statutes that constantly reinforce the affirmed anti-civilization profile, the anti-civilization honorable inheritance because surges and domesticates are always, again, for tears sorry, having a need to refine it in the moment in which policy and proceduralism are tied to white being better and perversive will to fix sociality itself is a resistance that begins at the level of military preservation. This is the appositionality being together yet against the very institutions that see political and logistical control. Military preservation is a sociopoiesis of institutionality itself, not a site for social reproduction and policy, but rather imagination of a disruptive site of planning that generates the social energy to grapple with institutions. In the first place amendment and 16 performative and repeated with each can be a rupture of institutionality works out due to strange logistics and individuals rationalizing their will to fix their both involved in the way the reduction of command of social individual. This thus sociality is itself is resistance policy is a name for the form of political control command takes to deputize disbursement form in which it controls social reproduction by diagnosing incorrectness for those that represent the need for improvement or change of policy mode and hardy controls policy to policy begins with military preservation in the face of policy to escape the procedures of policy mode and hardy offer the socioposted statement there's nothing wrong with us. Logistics counterize bodies, object affects information, regulations, capital logistics, party, and mode counterpose hapticality or love, the capacity to feel through others for others to feel through you, for you to feel them feeling you. The undercomes repeatedly defense and defeat of a neoliberal proceduralism and sociopolitical imagination is a term for non-political abolition beneath and beyond the university, inhabited by maroons, castaways, fugitives, and a positionality of being. Together, reduce our institutions as sites where the form and appearance of social being collectivity is determined through social action and conscience, or a broader sense of collective social being that neoliberal forms of institutional power. Let us imagine practice institutionality can be made anti-intuitively, that empower us to try to inhabit social otherwise, reminding us that radical change requires structure. White logistics has encroached upon the linguistic comments to the point where thoughts themselves are quantifiable and financialized, but as ubiquitous as the system is, it's always vulnerable to the system glitch, neural firings that are never supposed to happen in the movement that cannot be expropriated. Beller and something the communist circle has undergone colonial expropriation entitled directly in capital servitude. These overlaps with the evolution of the slave indigenous century. The encroachments, these the linguistic comments with a sense of level of technical saturation between the political has been lost. What can political mean in the world characterized by the algorithmic governance of platforms onto the exploration of cognitive linguistic by capital reduces discourse of production to the machine. The inequality sediment to the machines are operationalized injustice to produce a reproducible planetary culture founded upon racism. Machines can be understood as social formations. The social is a substrate of computation. Sociality is a positive program, a series of accumulation strategies operating through everyday consciousness. These scans of accumulation lay closely upon the body, mind, and time throughout the rendered quantifiable, computable, and programmable. There's a mistake of imagining the impact of technology both in one direction, technical forms and emergent dialectics and domination struggle from the weight that oppress the outflank to domination and persist in the big racial capitalism sedimented into the operating system machine architectures of our machines. This the code works on us and we work the code. This is how both of the micro and macro levels of struggle or organization. There's no way existing political discourse can happen in the horizon. Concurrent concepts in though itself so fully circumcised itself and they operate to fully functionize in the matrix of information and worksite transformation colonizes nearly all mental neural processes submitting them into interpretable machines. This finance institution of everyday life and everyone supports continues to throughout information in order to manage brutality and risk. We are dealing with the overcoding of bodies and practices, social, political, and accumulation, politics, and policy are always on this side of the state, and the state is the side of capital. Our work begins here in the room. Debate is not numerically sealed debate, but living, breathing microcosm of the race war. Movements are not just abstractions or overlying circuit points of the global sphere, but ongoing resistance that happen in our thoughts, actions, provocations, explorations. Our model debate seeks to extend towards new levels of understanding an imminent process that resistance that unleash beautiful insurgencies from the ground up. This work without a beginning, without an end, and constant planning as opposed to policy that we take with us wherever we go. Chicatis and Graver 7 investigation social research expanding possibility of political action. The work of Militant investigation is multiple extending antagonism to be levels of understanding. Militant investigation discovers new possibilities within the present, turning dead ends to joyful insurgency. Holloway Coppell book in the book of the essays Appetit. When we wrote it, we read the beginning is not a world, but the extreme mode faced with the mutilation of human life, the theoretical reflection, opposition, negatively struggle from rage without is born. Liberatory struggle, this ultimate struggle against identity. True revolution of knowledge would be a pragmatic form of knowledge that relay bears all potentially deeply embedded in the logic of transformational processes, fierce debate, and to Latin America arguments that turn to the very particular question of revolution, who had a better model than Zapatistas or Chavez. But bullying and revolution, the role of the balance is to abolish the white debate community. White debates are contradictions, seeking to organize without embracing what they disown. Meaningful cross-racial affinity can only be found in moments of revolutionary violence and self-defense. As Harney has seen our enemies have been not by fashion, but by democracy. Meaningful cross-racial affinity can only be found in moments of revolutionary violence. I'm not a pacifist. I'm for self-defense. Solidarity with blackness means that someone is indicating that now she or he wants to join not in a common struggle, but the struggle of blackness. The only white community is a contradiction. The only thing you can do is to abolish it. Communities, anti-communities, undercommon. People say who present and white are not allies because they have no place to show this unless they embrace blackness. Whiteness is either absence of violence, and white people have a big role to play in revolutionary violence. Let me go. Water.
Right here, so not behind you. Alright, you good? Good?
Yeah.
If we win, arm sales are good. Do we win?
No.
Okay, so I want to ask about the endpoint of your 1AC. You've identified a race war, and then you have proposed research as a counter method.
No. So we think that this debate is a question of competing models of research.
Sure.
We think that our model of research in which we endorse militant preservation as a form of way to form affectual relations
So
with each other is a good.
You endorse a method of learning about affective preservation.
It's more than just learning.
It's not learning. So we think that affect within debate is inevitable, i.e. how we talk to each other, how we relate to each other is inevitable.
What is the
Obviously,
endpoint of
there's
that? What is the endpoint of that?
Well, we think that is our problem with politics. That is what Moden and Harney described as having a telos to what should be the end.
Okay.
Is what
I mean, the problem is
we should live in moments of racial terror, connect to each other, feel.
So the problem is we're obviously going to impact on that. You've read a Rodriguez card about overall race war, and then you've said we should do research. How do you think?
So there's a uniqueness question about the race war. It's inevitable. There's no solving the race war.
Really?
There's no ending the race war.
Whoa, that's a bold claim.
Endurance, the Rodriguez evidence and the Moden and Hardy evidence do support this claim. There is no resolving the race war. It's a question of endurance and how we relate to
Can I ask what constitutes a race war?
So a couple things. There's two warrants. First is that the examples of like extrajudicial killings in Ferguson, the fact that just last week someone called
sorry,
a
you're not answering my
wellness check
question.
and a police officer shot.
I'm not asking for examples. I'm asking
No,
like
we think
what
that-
defines it? Because obviously, like police shootings, like you haven't provided ontology arguments for why we can't reform those things.
No,
So what is the warrant for why the
So
race war
after,
can't
like,
be
little
ended?
SWAT teams are being deployed
Yeah.
against.
Oh,
like,
So you're giving
protests.
examples.
No,
you provided no
okay, so
psychological or ontological.
that's the first warrant. The second
that's
part
not
is
a
the
warrant.
valor evidence and sort of our theory of logistics that says that logistics operates through waves and retreats.
Okay.
And valor evidence says that racism is no longer a function of primary institutions that say like there is a material consequence, but rather it's a psychic, the wiring within our brain that's repeated
Okay,
through
so
certain
it's just a
actions.
libidinal economy argument.
No,
Well,
it's
it's
not.
not-
The libidinal
we've
economy.
not-
Why? Okay, well, I mean,
Because
we're
it's not psychoanalytically grounded.
It's not. The libido economy depends
okay.
on
So the basis for race war inevitable is that there's a drive that makes people racist.
Correct.
Correct.
It's not a system of logistics. It's a system of containerization that determines the way in which we relate to each other.
Yeah.
That's the reason
Okay.
why
Those
it has
relations
race
are
war
overcome
inevitable.
by
And what-
moral functions.
What
There's
led
no-
that? What led that to start? Like, was that? Has that always been present in white people
Since the break of modernity.
Since the? So you
the break
think?
of modernity.
Okay. Round robin teams not being invited, black debaters and the cops calling on
Yeah.
them. How are these tied to the resolution?
Are they? Wait.
They're
we
tied
think-
to
They're
anti-black
tied to
debate
performances
practices.
of
Okay.
whiteness.
And how do you solve that?
We think it
Endurance.
practicality, loving each other, feeling each
Loving
other is
each
a question of to endure those forms of violence. Obviously, like all.
Okay, so you endure
obviously
you endure in
all that.
reaction, but this is kind of the same thing. You endure in reaction, but you don't try to solve those things.
It's
You
endurance.
can't solve those things. The realization.
Okay.
You come to the there is no possibility. There's an impossibility of a possibility.
What is the white
to
debate
relate to
community?
each other. It's this sort of set of protocols that upholds
Okay.
like racial antagonism.
Okay, so is the resolution one of those protocols?
we do think so.
So are black debaters reading plans part of the white debate community?
we think that the.
It's not, but like, see, that's where you made the
like
distinction.
one
Now you,
part of being
now
in
you
and
said a
out.
particular person. We're saying it's practices.
Send. 2 off case. Don't mind if you should stand.
Yeah, of course.
Great.
First off is T, interpretation of violation, the affirmative defend the hypothetical implementation of a topical plan they don't resolve for a colon reflects the legislative form, Army after school, by the colon tradition of form of resolution after resolve colon to this council, petition the mayor, USFG is the federal government, the USA based in DC, dictionary of government policy 98 on the United States federal government based in Washington DC, the text resolution calls for a debate on hypothetical government election as Erickson, and for each time it gets kill station the United States, the verb should or should actually should adopt a policy, the entire debate is about whether something ought to occur, reducing a DCS and or FMS requires government election, Sorensen, 9 FMS involves government weapons, DCS coordinated through the State Department, FMS coordinated by the DSCA, vote neg, first of prep, and Clive post facto topic cage, alters the balance of prep, which structurally varies the app because they speak less and use permutations, key to engage a preferred adversary and target a mutual contestation. Second is limit specific topics or key to reasonable accusation, or 2, and it's open so to create incentives for avoidance of monopolization of the moral high ground that denies the role for the neg and turns accessibility. Third is refinement, unlimited topics make consistent the validity of the one state truth claims impossible and cause a concessionary ground, which creates incentive for avoidance. Debate is imperfect, only interpretation can harness legal education and understands the law, strategic and irreversibly paired with intellectual survival skills that help us navigate and contest violent structures. This is the most plausible internal link from debate to meaningful social and political agitation of justice. Archer, 18 students made them surrender in actual innovation platform, injustice, justice, and complication to indicate a rebellious or lawyer working on executing advocacy to build a coalition, including organizational capacity, the collaboration, policy reform, and community organization must feed together the disparity, the enormity, the fight for justice and commerce, ability to tackle injustice, divinism, really powerful spirals, and only be broken by least faith to combine all legal analysis with broader engagement, understanding the complexity of problems and envisioning a more just future can lead to resolution and civil rights movement. Their strict use of litigation, those regards to building muscle or systemic change the opportunities to bring the issues and experiences into the classroom. That litigation can be imperfect, but indispensable strategy, powerful language can break the resistance, the focus on changing legal rules and surrounding political action, educating the public, and shaping the public debate. Really craft legal and factual narratives is important. The strategy to harness disruptive power of widespread utility movements, collective action, and process law may not be enough without federal replacements to avoid the break systemic problems into their historic moments, identify advocacy, alternatives, all with the cost and benefits of resolve instances which values visions, collide the use of excessive force by police officers against people of color. Advocates must bring part discrimination with more management acting as though they're single level that solve the problem. The advocates must attract by the short term versus long term. Small victories can be built in plus for systemic reform. Students make difficult choices and manage logical effective execution, transferring social justice knowledge to different contexts can persuade others. Resolution demand specific policy focus and switch side debating with an emphasis in argument distancing or all necessary facets of increasing political efficacy and to move to unlearn American militarism. Prefer our efforts only research being written about the competitively driven high school debate quarantine. 12 this part to utilize the Carney's pep to connect political, learn to high school policy debate, philosophy as a pathway to political knowledge through a racialist demand for policy action, peer debate, and committing political gains, participation, increase civic attachment through argumentation, training, the debate response, embrace resolution, and realize the rich complexity of argument and potential to choose the topic that are rewarding, that requires switch side debating, and tables to find personal meaning in argumentation, participation, contribute to political efficacy, debating, combined with the personal with argument provides a safe space, nuclear answer, will concern writing, indoctrination, unquestioned militarism, but debate forces, intelligent academic defense through concerns, political leanings, does not compromise the ideology, but rather is intellectual integrity and clear critical thinking, dialogue of students, and realization outside them, they don't have meaning, students think harder about things they have previously taken, forgetting individual arguments may really have no effect on our subjectivity, which means the ballot can't solve any of their offense. However, the process of clash and interpretation facilitates internal and turns the accuracy tied to resolution, incentivizes nuanced research and clash with well-prepared opponent. They turn debate into a functional monologue, which means their arguments are presumptively false until subjected to well-researched scrutiny. Next off is the critique of arms sales, militarism, broadly functional, fundamentally economic project that demand concrete organizing occur in El Caso way. 2000 analysis showed the need for understanding connection with neoliberalism and militarism, adjusting this through activism, articulating solutions to poverty, opposing neoliberalism, seeking effective strategy for demilitarization, opening up discourse and properly of our steps, including reducing weapons production and self-organized people must vision of accountable political system to the U.S. distinct advantage as and arms transfer, arms exports means seen as part of liberal militarism in the system focusing on military capacity in terms of capital intensity. The post-Cold War era changed position somewhat. Arms transfers were put in the concept of business relationships that promoting a constitution system to strengthen the industrial base security system concerns growing ideology of neoliberalism around the military. Therefore, a form of undercover resistance precludes effective organizing and obscure structures of power. That's Dean 15 couple states that argue them to have a system anchored in institutional laws and policies that say against capitalist durability, response to keeping the system running when the companies brand on the IMF, U.S. Treasury, determine the lives abilities, egalitarian political arrangement depends on seizing and redirecting the system into citizen policies focus on single microprices to procure the work in the state economy hinders the identification system as a side of hard dispersed energy that can be effective and concentrate questions of how to win or displace that given the climate change, the stakes for human extinction, that forcing change the challenge given the race loss balance organized politically across different issues and ideologies are daunting, get nowhere in the left resource to self-care to use your catalog differences to build up a left to exercise power to see to go along with individuals and then focus on collective power. The alternative is a politics for organizing around the common experiences of life shaped by the political economy. This starting point creates a model of solidarity that doesn't just add categories and stirs, but creates an inclusive class identity by a struggle that transforms this. It says Pantage 18 accounts for the more impasse life with love's current conundrum makes like the insufficiencies of identity remakes gates for politics focus and bring people together on the common experience of life shaped by the political economy. The extent of differences are real, the best way to negotiate them is a foundation of shared purpose and solidarity based on the pragmatic understanding that injury is one. So all this politics that in the process can fashion a broadly inclusive class identity, criticizing the ontological mistake of theories of kind of ideal so much attributes far too much historical and metatext. It avoids serious inquiry. Case. Even in times of intense racial violence, counter-revolution is not effective or necessary. Study 1960s black insurgency proved this as Waspo. 16 Clipboard agrees not just through least through choice tactic and influence mass opinion and political behavior. The non-violence of rights movement, tip civil rights was the transformative egalitarian coalition. The violent protests were associated with generalization of public opinion, caused politically meaningful subset of whites, which the ethnocratic or white members of the coalition. Nothing in the context in the egalitarian and ethnocratic coalition with Neville. The transformative egalitarian coalition was virtual when the absence of violent protests with the likely won the presidential election of 1968. Fugitivity cannot skip the Neville violence of existing institutional positioning. We should instead recognize our capacity for engagement and reconfiguration of existing structures. Love 15 Button Harney call for the undercommon their imagination over the outside is dead. The inside that is supported by content limits their refusal of justification as a strategy. Recognition, description, critique can be a way of an option once institutional position. The real differences between the inside and outside. Even the most diverse intellectuals in the academy are on the stroll in the metaphorical but not material system and normativity and made difficult to adjust implication. The balance of knowledge production and such balances is inevitable. Undertakings to work not only to escape into the radically different relation because we are in contemporary installations and pragmatic organization may be crucial for social justice, but to deny our own implication in existing structures is a form of violence. BLM improves institutional engagement, makes white people less racist, even assuming backlash Gampa 18 converging evidence to the white pro impulse very positive degrees to the current with BLM and hyper struggle aggregate attitudes were less pro white than BLM than pre-BLM and became increasingly less pro-white over time. Anti-racist social movements like BLM may be effective moving all racial groups towards egalitarian racial attitudes. So change among whites may reflect a greater for bias reduction. The essay offers the first empirical evidence that against social movements to a societal level change government movements were not strong enough to challenge the overall effect even among conservative participants. Social movements and aggregate attitude change can be mutually reinforcing. A social struggle may change attitudes promoting further productivity, which would further transform attitudes. Instead, we propose a model of institutional infiltration that seeks to map structures of power and gradually reform and destroy them from the inside. That's net more effective, especially in the context of arms control. Brian, 12, we need to answer the question of military logistics with what's the things the opposing war machine relies on. I've heard completely different military logistics. The entire point of this violence or strategy seems to be ideological critique. They're bang on critiques to say a war machine without things changed about the critique fails to reach people expressed in the foreign languages, academics, or other causal factors that are not discursive, propositional, semi-alleged. It's a combination of particular political insight, merely wonder how to get there to change social order involves intervening in material networks harvesting requires the activists become something more than a critic. The absence of pure antagonism fuels state crackdown, whereas a method of cooperation, moderation, and incrementalism are necessary aspects of the change through infiltration. The Leon 12 infiltration operating behind the lands can be a tactic that when thinking about current institutional realities, institutional cracks that emerged through decades of war and imperial aggression by the West is under these conditions, the resistance needs to be conceptualized. Exploding cracks demonstrates the narratives of revolutionary struggle are no longer viable. These may reproduce the current order, sabotage tactic that anarchists need to rethink. How do we deal with contradiction being located within an institution that sees the disciplined bodies? How do we sabotage those machines? Or anarchists should think about the idea of infiltration as guiding to think about practice within these institutional realities. Always look for cracks. Radicals and think of this as selling out. I want to reframe working within institutions as infiltration. The machine will continue to produce a disciplined fractured subject unless they are subverted. The state of and destroying social movements. The stage have a tremendous amount of authority. Procedure from our opponents past seem wholly inadequate, but despite this reality, for someone's privilege not to think theorize about these issues, this can be a place to pose political strategies that are adaptable.
You good?
Yep.
Cool. Sorensen, part of the United States Air Force. Why trust the other side during a race war?
We don't think we're not introducing Sorensen as part of a militaristic or imperialist project, rather as a descriptive statement of what
Yeah, why
the
trust
DCS.
descriptive statements?
Do you think the
by-
army is like writing definitions to infiltrate debate? Is that
Yeah,
like
sure,
the
why
extent
not?
of
We're
the
not
race
saying.
war?
Well, I mean, you're not
Why trust
gonna.
the army?
I don't understand why this applies here. Because I don't think Sorensen. I think you have to win that Sorensen is someone lying or mischaracterizing what DCS and FMS wins for you to win
Okay,
the argument
well-
here. We're not introducing Sorensen as part of a militaristic project or endorsing the Air Force,
Fair.
but
The
as a
clash
definition
arguments,
of.
okay, clash arguments. Walk me through how like a disad counterplan debate creates relations with each other.
We'll create relations with each other. I guess we impact turn the focus on only
What-
focusing on,
okay.
on relation with others as our only
Well,
strategy for changing.
let's talk about that. What
Okay.
card do you think that you've read in the 1 and C that says relations with each other are like that form of politics is bad?
We don't think that's bad. We just think that as a starting point and that as a singular
Yeah.
focus, as opposed to institutional organizing against institutions
What part,
that
any
perpetuate
card
violence.
that you think you've read that says that focusing on relations with each other is bad?
We don't think it's bad. We
Wait,
think
Or starting with
The
that
whole
form of
argument
politics
is that we should do that around institutionality. Like,
Yeah.
just loving people is not going to change racist people's minds. It occurs through argumentation, through switch side debate, and institutionality.
So what do you think? Okay, walk me through that then. What do you think about like debating the institutions, changed institutions, or any racial, any
Yeah,
like,
the,
racist people?
we have several examples. Brian and De Leon's talk about a strategy of institutional infiltration in which analyzing material conditions, i.e. analyzing how militarism and violence perpetuate themselves through state institutions, is a better strategy towards changing those institutions, mapping
So just analyzing and understanding.
No, it's not just
these
analyzing and
institutions.
understanding. It's we say our model on framework of switch side debate, nuanced clash, where we can.
So students switching sides, learning about institutions makes people less racist.
Yes.
now.
Yes.
Yeah, we've read ed that supports that. You have no studies to like support this
Okay,
typology.
first of all,
Yeah,
your
wait.
evidence was like it clearly says that it was a self-selected study and whoever wanted to participate
I
could
don't.
participate.
Yeah,
But,
but that doesn't mean that it's
it's
like,
like,
that doesn't mean it's
regardless-
biased. You're not gonna have any.
Wait, what?
counters. This warranty evidence is about a qualified study.
That'll be the 2AC argument. We'll move on to the CAPK.
Okay.
It says, or one last argument. It says you said that debate does not affect subject formation, but then you said that debate creates the skills to combat American militarism.
That's different. We're saying that voting after negative debate does not change how we view the world.
But
how
you
we
said
view
debate
ourselves.
does change how we view
No, the
American
long-term process of clash and argument
So
environment
then why
over
doesn't the
time.
long-term process of debating the app change how we view?
Because it's again, this goes back to our argument about institutional engagement. It does not change our subjectivity. What happens in
They
this
have
world.
to win institutional engagement for the
We
subject.
don't have to win institutional engagement. We just say the argument is
answer
that
every question I asked.
Yeah, because we impact on the whole 1AC.
The critique, the Dean evidence describes micropolitics, goes on to say self-care. What part of the app was self-care?
we say that your argument about fugitivity and outright resistance is part of it.
I've already sent out the doc.
The order will be case K2.
The case K then T.
Yeah.
You said you sent it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Case first.
Yeah. You good? I'm good. Just okay. Cool. The race war is real and happening now. The alt-right Ferguson extrajudicial killings, anti-black debate practices like black debaters eating the cops called on the clashes, so it's the nature of round roberts all prove the imminent smoothness of white logistics that suitures the internal debate of DCS FMS in the face of the logistics of policy we endorse militant preservation as a practice of planning that dwells in the anti-civilizational echo to energize militant sociality as a method of communicating and understanding how our affect touches each other and how we're able to relate each other as a way of navigating the race war. That's when I see Militant and Rodriguez out as the role of the judge to abolish the white debate community. Cross-racial affinity can only be found in moments of revolutionary violence, which means that we must begin at the level of blackness as a Moten and Hardy, but as the first counter-revolution arguments. No, we're not counter-revolution. It's a question of enduring the race we're relating to each other, navigating these spaces that are inherently racist. We've chosen the anti-racist side, the fugitivity arguments. One, nothing but the one he sees fugitivity. Blackness is always and already fugitive. Rather, it's a question of hapticality and militant preservation. How we're able to energize the sociality as a way of relating to each other, affect itself, and the way we relate to each other can never be co-opted by institutions. But the incorrect conceptualization of it relies on an incorrect conceptualization of the undercommons as being out there, rather it's really inherent how we relate to each other. The BLM card one, the progressive isolation of representation diverts energy by keeping people trapped in the mindset of next time it'll be better, which diverts energy from fighting the race. Were all examples at the top prove that even if it is less racist, logistics recreates its interpersonal relationships, interpersonal racism, which is our theory of power. There's two arguments here. One, they have it wrong. Whiteness is the normative ground of institutions. The possibility of reform is a form of suspended futurity that ignores the surges and retreats of white beings under logistics. The internal debate necessitates categorical, not piecemeal inclusion as a precondition. As the Rodriguez evidence, we've made a prereq argument about how institutionality should be reimagined. Second, we also have a theory of logistics as a smoothing by containerization of affect for circulation as capital creates and divides racial signifier, which proves our argument is also a white guilt. Decided evidence because it's self-selected white participants in their study. Just no dip, they're going to say that they're less racist. The Bryan evidence flows out because there is no internal link between debates and politics. Also, navigating probably solves this argument, but also doesn't describe students to debate no internal link, and so if it's a question of models, then we solve to because LBS proves that we can hold governments accountable. Also can't solve the race war on which side means their models equally likely to make debaters think that arm cells are good. The last alien evidence also not an answer to our theory of logistics, which was already explained above. Even if it is incrementalism, it is a smoothing out of that inevitably co-ops the way in which we're able to relate to each other. They have to pick a side. There's only logistical sabotage is able to solve this because it's the only way that we can fuck up the assembly line at the level of sociality itself. Okay. Case outweighs the race war fractures socialist organizing because it ensures that your purity politics reformulate whiteness that continues to wage war against black and brown communities. Capitalism can't explain how bodies are overcoded by race and overkill operates or how intimate violence happens in spaces like debate because there can never be a rational explanation. The one I see is an update to their theory. Logistics is the newest wave of capitalism that containerizes and privatizes affect. It's no longer a question of being alienated from the means of production but the means of social reproduction, which is something only the African solve permutation do with. This is logistical sabotage. The Beller evidence indicates the transition of capitalism to a system of logistics is neurologically encoded, which means that only sociality under a counter theorization of affect can block these cognitive linguistic transmissions. Coupled with benefits. One is a precursor orientation that's necessary for successful movements, which internal link chose the alternative. Second, absent racial ethics movements become colorblind and put black and brown bodies on the back burner. Third, explicit movement across the color line is starting. And 17 are basic problems educating organizing cups on resupply wage to whiteness, the racial national state phobia, wages to whiteness, the class ratio, to class unity, racialized the left couldn't return to their settlement between labor and capital, failed to see how liberalism was racialized foundational sort of forces to exploit humanity across the color line revolution, intercommunalism, working the absence of the revolutionary, intercommunalism saw that alliance of political social movements aim was not only united for against counters but also create alternate forms of the link debate. The only link they have is somehow steering under comments is super pathologizing because people like Patrice Douglas have used the black radical tradition or Nick Brady proves that we are material in some instances because our theory is provides a way for black people to navigate these spaces in the first place. There's no impact distinction 9 out of 2050 for black and brown bodies, police and motorized violence, land occupation, gentrification, surveillance, all prove the race war comes first. Fear of capitalism's collapse can never grapple with how the race war collapsing marginalized communities. Now the alternative one, there's a hapticality. Decide the alternative bypasses issues of how we relate to each other and circulate affect as endurance in the race war, yet requires that black and brown people invest their labor in the movement. The impact is psychic burnout that prompts of a renewed system of logistics that sort of recodifies race as a signifier upon bodies. Second is a rationality. Decide the fact that they have to identify and have to rationalize anti-black violence as symptomatic of economic rationality, diverse energy away from whiteness, which only invigorates the race war on their wrong side. Third is a planning. Decide how does party formation occur? How do you get to that? Their envisioning assumes an appeal to governability, which inevitably gets co-opted, whereas the undercommons is always already engaged in complaining of the party. Fourth is an expropriation. Decide their alternative fails to account for the ways in which capitalism extracts value beyond exploitation. That's Wayne. And 18. Racializing that market black residents notable and intimately tactical police officers treatments of black people scale black humiliation capitalism that accuracy like exploitation expropriation, but one things the other. Possibility leads to those who capital expropriation and the possibility for the freedom of those who exploit the free workers. Contrary capitalism leads to self-labor, power for wage independent by expropriation as the contractual agreement in the present regime commercial accumulation financial capital not only traditional but also those who are being from the status of citizen workers of the card at citizen workers. T. Debate is not a game, but a microcosm of the race where their movement to procedurals upholds the internal debate of white being that acts as a corrective to reinstantiate as protocols put procedurals on hold in the race war because competitive protocols can't be divorced from the social motorization of debate itself. Form is content. One I see Beller says the cognitive linguistic has been suffocated by an algorithm mode of governance which necessitates the harvest of life, proves the ballot warrant because it serves as a neurological rewiring that reprograms everyday consciousness towards sociality, which also is a spill out is that their model results in psychic burnout that staves off militant potentiality in favor of maximizing logistical clash and procedures. Counterterm asks must defend strategies against the internal debate of DCS FMS. Resolve needs to be determined. as dictionary.com. No date resolved to actually determine the USF is a contestable assemblage of protocols is smaller. And 15, the studies in the assemblage makes points resonate together geographical, linguistic, moral, economic, technological, particularly seeing the status in assembliges, reconstructing the basis of its functioning should imply the prescription as Oxford 17 utterance of what should be preferred. 1. It's militant skills. The Shikani's evidence is the debate over strategies of resistance are key for those living through the race war because the only predictable debate is over the race war. Things like Zapatistas versus BPP as a form of revolutionary agonism to formulate strategies during the race war. Second, their vision of a predictable stasis point is not neutral negotiation but presumptive of such that under the terms of the internal debate, i.e. the demand for fiat, even with the lack of resolutional basis that Al-Bolsi protocol of the race war would impact transmission because the necessity to play devil's advocate just has the energy to pick a side right here, right now. The disaster their model. 1. Their model forces suspended futurity that's solvent. And 2. Black Americans continue strategies expanding male liberal faith can function as a cool optimism with Adams from the house of the black hole can damage the type of society, charges flourishing the anti-black race radical has been looking briefly to have depression, tension, and jealousy that declare African Americans high rates of hypertension, cardiovascular disease, return with their standard for mortality. These symptoms moreover can be transferred to racial. Second is a pacification. It is that their dispel of the internal debate in favor of the American policy frame for debate pacifies militancy as an insurrection politics, which gives into whiteness and its demands, which side forces oppositionality and not apositionality, which is what the Militant evidence describes as the only way to imagine militant preservation as socio-poesis rather than reactionary. Third, their call for stasis in a moment of crisis, they move to equilibrium that maintains civil life in the race war that refuses. Fourth, the TV is not competitive or responsive. It's what debate could look like, not what debate has to look like, which means that it doesn't resolve our own others. It doesn't resolve our offense about only militant skills here, not fairness. It's just an internal. Like if we win a research model, is the best way to generate militant skills. Then you vote have no fairness in a race war. Then we maximize the status quo order that keeps antagonisms at bay. That's what it said. Any bill of almost for white people don't fairly apply to everyone. There's a root principle like fairness norms, harmony between the races. How can we maintain maximum order with the minimum amount of change while preserving ourselves the copies of our wishes to do reforms better more process something that keeps antagonisms at bay. Mark the card. Idea testing truth is arbitrary liberty checks any falsifiability claims exclusion also transfers that you exclude micro-political strategies means that they link to a white echo chamber. Debate is a side of ideological warfare that regulates who can participate in dialogue. A vision of clash that adds black participants and serves a superficial multiculturalism that intensifies racial tear. That's Hawthorne and Heights 18. The Academy regulates who can participate in dialogue. A project of add black people ensures a liberal politics of superficial inclusion claims to dialogue are frequently invoked to exterior lack of engagement. We should strive for something more radical than dialogue. Merit of intellectual Materiality of intellectual inquiry reviews cursory research black social and necessities of policy engagement. We reject the pressures of the academy generation black spots that card spaces even when they're not formally offered to see the table. Then we enter into debate. We are studying the radical black tradition dialogue. This comes at a high consequences of real sense of harm that includes participants from discussion. Black liberation must be understood as a practice of challenge, limits of dialogue. The actual topical policy advantages like catching ormic are intrinsic, but repeated with just resolutional predictability. Limits explosion does not unique. The topic is bidirectional. Their interp says that the only way to reduce DC half message is removed from the USML, which means there's less restrictions to purchasing weapons since arms are now governed by the DOC. Reasonability competing interps creates a reverse overlimiting interps at the expense of ethics. If we are unreasonable, K-teams will be atypical, which turns their standards. The role of the judge is to non-black academics must take seriously the way their desires interact with black scholars. That's King. In 19, when I'm confronted with yet another white people project on black people's bodies, which we can I'm not compelled to ask more questions. Labor that seeks to abolish black must study non-black body as a side of blackness, far from altruistic expression of allyship. Non-black scholars could be receptive to asking themselves the following question: how does studying black bodies make me feel? The empathetic discussion of violence and politics of pure nature reason the empathetic practice of accountability does not naively assume that non-black scholars produce blackness and expression of allyship. The corporate university that produce scholarships for primary interest in producing political action, their eradication of anti-black based on corporate university transition to work against our best self-regular white non-black culture actors will reflect upon how black studies say that non-black scholars could choose to open themselves up. Open themselves is words more.
Are you good?
Give me one second. Yeah.
Kay's made a bunch of arguments about your theory of logistics.
Sure.
What is that?
Cool. We've made two arguments, the way in which our theory operates. First, our theory of logistics is logistics in and of itself is the way in which the smoothing out of modernity operates. The way, two specific ways logistics operates is containerization, i.e. all the arguments we made about containerizing affect and separating it from body. Containerizing affect and divorcing it from body. So the way in which we're able to relate to each other and our actual agency become divorced is the arguments that we're
I think the King evidence is phenomenal on this question and says that your mode of politics in which the United States federal government is committing some sort of atrocity disavows the way that we are intertwined within anti-blackness. We realize that the cops are a bad policing structure without realizing that sometimes we are the cops.
I guess why are those mutually exclusive though? Why?
Because you understand on the one out there trades off with what we.
Why is that a trade-off though? We've made arguments as to how these things are bound up.
I think I'll explain the trade-off, right? A lot of the case arguments are about how, there is a way in which institutions can be less racist, etc. But the case, it fails to understand the way in which we ourselves can be racist at certain points, right? That is the trade-off.
So we've made arguments as to why those things are bound up in each other, i.e. how police...
No. None of the 1NC evidence says that the institutions are bound at the way we affect each other. That's why when I asked in 1NC cross-ex, I was like, well, how do we relate to each other in a counterplan dissent debate? You're like, what? No,
we're
it's not about that. It's
right?
we're impacting
that's
institutions good. That's why I kept
sure,
asking that question.
Okay, that's fine. The K, link debate, You said the AF material in some ways. You've
Right,
made
so-
it pretty clear that
No,
the AF
okay, I'll-
focuses on relationality.
I'll explain this.
You don't
The
think
dean-
relations
stop,
are their
stop.
Well, no, that's material. But
Yeah, no,
I guess
I'll-
what do you mean by materiality in that
Sure,
sense?
I'll explain this. The dean evidence is like the way in which we understand the undercommons obscures materiality, but we've given examples of black people like Patrice Douglas and Nick Brady that have used the black radical tradition as theory for engaging with the world. For example, when Patrice Douglas's brother was incarcerated in the prison industrial complex, her understanding of people like Saidiya Hartman allowed her to better conceptualize and theoretically understand the reasons for why these things happen. When Nick Brady was challenged by the JHU multiculturalist office, by using Afro-pessimistic and black radical tradition, he was able to better
Okay.
understand the ways in which these things operate. He was able to protest.
Why is that a reason that the
It's
AF
a reason why we're
uses things?
material. Black people have been able to use the black radical tradition to do material
And
things.
the fact that you think like how we relate to each other isn't material, the way that
I mean, that's not the
form common
argument there. I
communications,
just-
the way we talk to each
So
other,
I guess
are
it
material.
goes back to the argument about institutional versus interpersonal relations and engagement. Does the AF do anything material in the institutional sense, or not?
We think that this is a debate about how we relate to each other.
Okay,
The
so
debate
that's-
cannot
okay, so
affect
that's
our
just
agency
the
of how we affect institutions. There's no one-to-one correlation between saying that the United States federal government should do something
Okay.
and that change. Rather, there is a
Why is that an
one-to-one
argument?
correlation.
Why is that an argument for why a model of institutional engagement is bad, though? I don't understand.
Because
that.
the theory of
we
logistics
also-
means
no-
that those are
The
not
theory of
successful.
logistics impact turns in,
Yeah.
and we've also made a no internal link argument.
Debate is a game where the ballot makes provisional judgments. The quality of debating with the casting a final judgment on the position themselves. The resolution exists not as a final consensus on arms sales, but rather a proposal to ensure balance, class, two impacts versus fairness, competition, subsets. Every decision we make, which means only we have a debate, keyboard, argument, engagement, and training benefit to debate as a competition, but their structural impacts exceed the transformative passivity. One round voting for them will leave you with a righteous taste, but a false sense of accomplishment. Both sides are clearly going for the ballot, which is proven by their strategizing change. When I see pre-round, every time they say fairness, instant impact, you should remember that they rely on you to judge the debate fairly, which is the reason it can't be separated from kind of the debate in the limelight. They can't win offense because you can vote next to engage to endorse the normative content on the what I see, but recognize that their positions are prerequisite to the fairness of the game. Second is strategic lawyering and activism. Extend the archer evidence debate generates the skills necessary to navigate legal institutions. They have no response to mental uniqueness questions that black activists are engaging in demanding for change now. That demands direct legal action to overall institutions and requires legal action to protect protesters and others directly resisting right-wing violence. Activists require legal experts to tailor the forms of resistance, knowing when not to engage and when to engage institutions and their vulnerabilities. Key to the effectiveness of collection action. Their one-size-fits-all rejection and withdrawal is ineffective insofar as that the institutions are multifaceted, they're complex, and they're contingent, which means that we should kind of pursue this legal education as a strategic targeting of racial institutions. The line behind they say debate is a microcosm. It's a microcosm insofar as that the reason that debate is racism is not that it's incidentally so, but rather it's a reflection of those broader institutions, which is the reason that we should orient ourselves to those broader institutions. But it's a game insofar as all research, all innovation is guided by the competition to win, which is proven by their strategizing, their updating their 1AC and the versions of the race war. It proves that insofar as we should preserve that competitive aspect so that research and discussion can be maximized. They say procedural fairness. We should be willing to put procedural limits in place because those are the only reasons that we can engage in the first place, which internally turns all their offense. They say form is content. The resolution does not determine over-determine form, i.e. in the 1AC they said things like the debate rejecting non-Western scholarship is bad. That's not mutually exclusive with the resolution. You can obviously read non-traditional forms of scholarship, but they adhere to Western form insofar as they read evidence in a Western format and cited authors in a traditional way, which means it's linked back to all their offense. They say ballot is a reworking. The argument here is that no one ballot can shape our subjectivity. The idea that voting affirmative in this debate will make us less racist is a form to assuage white guilt and persuade white justice that they're actually doing need some. Activism is hard. Changing institutions and racist minds is hard, which is reason that occurs over the course of a season, over the course of class, not one ballot. They will say relationality is material and they will go for that argument. That's not our argument. Obviously, relating with one another is material insofar as we can talk with one another, but you should ask yourself, why is that relationality necessary in the first place? The reason is because broader institutions have forced black people to live on the edges, which is shown by the 1970s, post-1970s retrenchment of the state, denying social services, denying healthcare. What the heck does relationality do for black people without healthcare? It's insofar as relationality is important, that should be oriented to broader institutional struggle. They say psychic burnout. The burden for all these psychology arguments is for them to produce empiric studies and falsifiable evidence, which they have none of. They say counter-derivation and links to all of our offense. First is ground and limits. Remember, when I see cross-stakes, they don't defend a reduction in arms sales, which means all neg ground that is prepared around the resolution is out of the picture, and that's the most reciprocal literature base because it's the most things being written about. To the extent that they have a literature base, it's not in depth, and means that everything is broken at the same first tournament, but it also allows any form of militancy and to endorse any movement, indigenous militancy, queer militancy, which obviously unlimits because it lowers the burden for the negative to be topical so low that the neg can never prepare. They say resolved. Our definition is resolved : reflects a legislative form which ties the affirmative to a specific legislative form, but there's unlimited insofar as it just allows thinking to be an action. They say USFG. They haven't counter-defined FMS and DCS. They conceded that it's a governmental list on the USML, which means that
they are de facto aren't topical, even them at USFG. They say should. It doesn't assume should in the resolution. The Erickson F says it's USFG as an agent, and then we're taking an action. It also links to all of their offense because it just devolved into peaceful versus militant activism good every single debate. Our whole argument here is that we need to consider the specificities of policies, the specificity of arms sales, the specificities of supply chains, whereas their debate kind of devolves into kind of a superficial reading of what it means to be militancy, whereas ours forces into a targeted resolutional context of the state. They say militant skills. That was above. They don't solve that because the debates that do come about over militant skills are superficial. We've also internally turned that insofar as the Bryan evidence on case and the 1NC evidence says that the only way to cause debaters to question their kind of militaristic and patriotic assumptions is through switch side debate, which they don't access because every single debate is militancy. They say fiat. It's not extra topical. The Erickson evidence is in the context of policy debate and says it's part of the resolution advocate. Devil's advocate is good. Think of Malcolm X in prison thinking about what white racists could say so that he could reorient his strategy better. It's not superficial. Their idea that we should just always take a position ignores how you need to think through opposition to effectively combat it. The Sullivan evidence, our model doesn't require black debaters to have political hope, but rather for them to defend the USFG for the sake of a game, which doesn't mean they have to believe the USFG is redeemable. Malcolm X proves that it's possible. Sullivan's wrong when Gate 16. Consistent with previous literature, negatively correlated depression, agency negatively correlated suicidal ideation. Those who are more hopeful above against the leaders of facts better equipped to cope. African Americans exhibit higher hope may be buffered against suicidal ideation. It's good for black people. That's Materiality 17. There is a real scientific evidence. Optimistic, especially the better health. Optimistic, likely to cardiovascular health. Optimism appears to be associated with low levels of diet, slower disease progression, improved survival rates. The subjective well-being is associated with improved longevity compared to individuals who maintain a negative assumption regarding their future. They say pacification. This said, all these arguments assume that what we advocate in debate is what we do. Our argument is that what we advocate in debate teaches us about institutions so that we can better be militants outside the space. If you would wish to do so, let's say stasis that was kind of impacted at above. It's good because we need a stasis to discuss the best form of militancy. They say TBA. I'll do that here. It's have the USFG reduce arms sales through the AFRICOM program and then have advantages about the militarization of AFRICOM being an intimate part of the race war. Owner 16 U.S. military forces in Africa have led to disproportionate development of military institutions relative to their roles has continued to fund African armies but are responsive by African militaries through citizens being recorded over the Gaddafi by interventionist coalition including the United States and paramilitary groups. Use of involvement is often where aggregated African plights. RTBA is prescribed by their 1AC evidence. Melism 16 my suggestion for reduce institutions the cyber collectivities determined through social activity publicized institutions my calls to work with the paradox institutionality. A new meeting infused with disruptive potential liberal disorder institutionality can be made to anti-intuitive with a critical rubus and Paris and Hamler under comes to reminding us radical change requires structure. They say it's what it could be. The TBA is not a counter plan, rather it shows that that their literature base is not mutually exclusive with engagement, and every act has problems with its mechanism. They have to win why that is net worse, and reading the most radical version of their arguments on the negative solves any remainder of the offense. They say fairness is an internal link. It's an intrinsic good that was in the overview because they rely on fairness for the debate to happen, which means it's a prerequisite to engagement in the first place. They say Wilderson, fairness as a value, it's good as good. It's the only thing that self-domination from large groups. The reason that racism is bad is because it unreciprocally divorces and enforces racial targeting, which is bound up in the logic of fairness. Also, fairness in debate is good because the only thing stopping big teams from breaking new apps every round in an unlimited topic. They say truth testing. We're not extending truth testing as a reason the one you see is false, but the only way that we can, if they're so right about the race war, meaning politics is irredeemable, we will come to agree with them over the course of a season. But that is net better because debate after going 3-3 every tournament because they lose on the app every single time, we will learn through research, through in-depth debate that they are right. But their interpretation is just telling white debaters that the state is bad, which doesn't actually lead to those kind of affective communication that they are wanting. They say ideological warfare. It's not our model. They haven't had a warrant for exclusion, i.e. what is a warrant for why a resolutional debate is inaccessible. The empirics disprove this and it's paternalistic to say otherwise. They say fiat is exergy. That was Erickson up above. They say limits is not unique. This misrepresents the topic. It goes to the CCL, but one, there's no solvency advocates for that. Nobody's reading it. Also, the app literature is side bias, so they would lose every time if it's bidirectional because they would just lose to arm sales bad on the CCL. And there's no evidence taking off the USML puts it on the CCA. They say reasonability is good, it's bad because it invites judgment interpretation. There's no definition of what is reasonable, which invites a fringe topical apps. The less judges that vote on team means less and less topical apps are burning. They say K teams will always go on topical. You can vote negative in this round to endorse to remedy that procedural unfairness that was occurred because of their not defending the resolution. Also, it's a question of models of the day. Voting negative endorses ours until we don't have to win an actual deterrence. They say non-black academics. The King evidence is obviously important how we kind of allocate black scholarship within a model, but the stuff I did at the top about how non-Western scholarship can be used as a justification for topical plans answer this, and we've impact turned that insofar as it's paternalistic for them to say that like black scholarship like the BLM is not valuable because they're actively calling for state engagement, which proves that they've cherry-picked black scholarship insofar as they have said some forms of black scholarship are good and some form are bad. Arguments that even if we want to go against the state outside the space, we still need to learn about it.
You good?
Yeah.
Cool. What would models or debate look like under the TBA?
I mean, the TBA is our model debate. That's a topical
So,
app.
okay, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
What about debating AFRICOM creates relations with each other?
The argument is that through the process of debate, the innovation that occurs, and the neg going for your app every time on the true and R, we will come to learn that the state is irredeemable, and then we will orient ourselves as such. Debate over the course of a season, this is what's so magical about debate. It orients ourselves to truth. The true arguments are the ones that win out over the course of a season.
Pause. The answer to debate doesn't create subjectivity or relationality was that debate does not create truth. We just learn the skills, and it's not what we do outside.
No. So there's a distinction. It's what we argue isn't necessarily, like, we don't have to believe the things we argue.
But you just said that throughout the course of the season, we come to the conclusion that something is true, and that's what we're going to do.
Not because we're arguing or arguing it, it's because we're losing to it. Think about an app. Like, let's say we just read our policy app, and then you go for race war, and we lose every time because the literature is just so on your side. The empirics are so persuasive. As you said, it's so true in the 1AC. Then we would come to realize that you're right.
But we've said that militant debates over different forms of militancy are good. What part of the app, reading AFRICOM, would be a militant
Are you serious?
strategy?
AFRICOM is an integral part of the U.S. war on terror.
You think that the app saying that we should imagine the United States reduce restrictions
I think that's
on
important.
AFRICOM would be a militant strategy?
Yes, that's an important thing activists have to learn about. What militant strategy have you endorsed post-1AC? Aside from relationality.
Hapticality is a militant.
Okay, what does that lead to? How do you got healthcare for black people? How do you stop interventions? These are things our model forces debaters to question, but yours doesn't.
Okay, well, that one error. The counter-interpretation, what about the counter-interpretation unlimits the topic?
So, first of all, you have no definition of what militant preservation is, which kind of...
That's not the counter.
Yeah, it is. It was... Okay, what's your counter?
Militant strategy.
It's the same thing. You have no definition of what militant
Not the
strategy
same
is.
thing.
But like,
Do you have a definition of that?
Yeah,
How could people ever go for
it?
Really? You think you have an intent to define from like this is this is that?
Yeah.
That's what T cards have to be.
Yeah.
Second is that
When I see
even then, so you've identified one militant strategy as relationality. If that's the basis,
No, whoa, we said relationality is a type of militant strategy,
sure.
not that all militant strategies are relational.
No, I agree with that. I agree with that. As in that's one manifestation of a topical app, right?
So you
Yeah.
think that the app hasn't said what militant strategy?
No, I think the app is one example of a topical app. But if the burden is that low, that quote relationality is a topical app, then think about what apps could be broken. Any form of relationality, any form of militant preservation is
Why are debates over those forms of relationality bad?
because well, I mean,
Like, for
it's a
example,
question.
like 3 weeks ago at GSU, when Baylor had a debate against YPF about different forms of hapticality love, and the negative had to go for pessimism
That's a
and
great.
say that those
Yeah,
forms of
I
relationality.
understand the
Why is that
referee
debate bad?
empirics argument.
Why
Like,
is
it's
that
not a good
debate bad?
argument. For one, that there's not a reciprocal literature base. Maybe isolated debates are possible, but the literature that does exist would be played out. Two, it's not predictable because none of your evidence in the
So you
context.
say that those debates between those two teams are a bad debate.
They're not trivial, but they're superficial insofar as there's a cap for negative
So you
engagement.
don't think that there was negative engagement in that debate?
I think the ability for the neg was severely limited for the depth of literature, which is true.
We aren't going for the K to continue the permutation, just to the competition. Any cost applications are new and just find new to in our responses. But looks in the link as a reason their practice is bad. The circuits of oppression, they're signing are run by institutions that repair capitalism. That's exactly why redirecting the system is key. Micropolitical resistance fails because it obscures the way the state and the economy cooperate. Also ignores the system as a sign of harmful, fracturing, planetary resistance that should and needs to be concentrated. Micropractices aren't paid because they're radical, but because they're easy given the scale of the challenge. That's D. And we are pathologizing. Yes, it may be true that their strategy is material insofar as it communicates with people in the world, but that doesn't mean the bar of other authors advocating rather than channeling energy into the individuals examples they describe in crossing that should be channeled into engaging complex institutions that perpetuate those forms of violence. Community-based organizing must be focused on precarity and materiality. Irvin, 1981 to be community-based has to deal with the impact of state on lives that can be considered around common current numbers. You have to have an ongoing program to deal with the kind of authority and control in terms of state repression. People have to serve on a daily basis. So you're going to have a movement that deals with survival issues. You have to fight the government. It's the government who's the enemy. We think the enemy is suits when going the wrong direction. The Afro is the ideology of Occupy, claiming the debate against relationality and a sign for organic horizontal politics. You can only sell out radical change markets. 12 there's been an increase in these with the universal categories thought in New Anglo therapists have begun to emerge sensitive to localities and radical seems to be where political and economic institutions their emphasis on everyday practices. The question mark has fallen heavily over the whole wave as a continuous social system and the roles that should lead to it. Radicals now trying to create misplaced freedom underlying critique with aliens who arctic the origin space for self-determination occupy self-modern covering local space to repoliticize core viruses and top-down management occupy so to create new policy which decision move horizontally consistent decision making with endless process and consensus is over there for this reason movement definitely sympathetic to classic affirmation mirror card aspirations the case page proper the weird impact during the one approach to policies focusing socially solely on individual relationality and keeping resistance in this room. It's a privilege neoliberal white dream that calcifies resistance. First, the idea of escaping from the states of double term with the race war for any. If it's true that there is a race war and the outside, but running away from engagement can't solve any of their offense. The low 15 cards and impact during their arguments about relationality being the sole focus we should have. Escaping positionality in this world reemphasizes hierarchy by refusing to recognize the location. Each of us have an active institution as a conservative tactic. There are two impacts. First, amass privilege and prevents the potential challenging from quasi privileged position that dissent can infiltrate, and second, prevents meaningful change. They lock in the focus on individualism that sacrifices large-scale change and coalitions. Their only answer is that they are fugitivity, but love and that's the way that 2AC explains the strategy as the undercoming existing in this space and between people outside of institutions, framing each of all these arguments that institutions and interpersonal relationality seeps into each other, i.e. we can't just be self-affirming but inform the relationalities when black people literally don't have housing, they don't have healthcare, which are material realities which outweigh that proves how bound up everything is and how their model ignores so much of the problem, which means it's try they for RC. Instead, in response, move forward a model of institutional infiltration and rejects the strategy of non-cooperation and non-reforms, and that is net more effective. One see Brian and one see De Leon say micro-political acts of resistance that focus on disengagement are doomed because they can't shift the minds or institution that sustain racial violence, which means their strategy is co-opted and shut down. Instead, prefer a model of understanding the institutions, engaging material reforms. That's the only way to find the cracks in the system and to sabotage them, which turn to arguments about militarism and sabotage. We access Brian first, the framing office proves that. Second, it's an impact on their model, even if we can't solve it. And the next argument about the race war, we solve it. First, institutional focus is good. The fact that they've explained the violence in the race war as part of institutional arrangements, i.e. Police brutality, proves that engaging those to stop it is good. There's no trade-off, which proves that theory of logistics. That was the argument above about interconnection. Their intellectual projects must be combined with political details and context of military policy. Engagement doesn't displace or cross social criticism, but enhances potential as Miller. 13, no such influence policy but pressing others have need for scholars to engage with ongoing operations, civic policy without engagement with the policies, impossible engagement with the morality of war. Only by saying the social critic can show the governing practice and the values. Engagement requires continuation policy. The alternative is disengagement. Must be theorists and conflict with policymakers. This does not mean the sacrifice critical doesn't face of our policymakers' role. Be forced to accommodate other decisions engaged directly to ensure workers' policy relevant, highlighting hypocrisy, and find the tools for interpretation action for us, basis for political activism. They say incrementalism is bad. First, their model is worse. It destroys mobilization outside of space because we don't know what to target, which makes social movements fail. We've heard a bunch of saying keeping resistance micro-political is bad. Second, institutional focus is better. That's Taylor. 18 disciplines that does actual adolescence is new involving and interview social movements, movement for black lives on the deeply repatriated racial, they say violence and poverty, incarceration, surveillance, militarization, law enforcement, capital punishment, and government justifying compensation of interlocking institution gives challenge to the current Trump era mark card. Trump era, the redeemability arguments in white guilt stuff, their psychology arguments are wrong. Johnson finds despite antagonism, there's a deliberate aspect that drives and stressor, a dysfunctional subject act otherwise to give a pursuit gratification. The stories are forced to be free contradictions from common internal liberal economy, more privacy for freedom as a chance to break down determining nexus to immersion, something other than smooth continuation. Empirics go off and loving in the abstract fails. Spends 15 the movement. Rothstein lost our ability to argue for public goods. It still exists in institutions of rapid political action. Black youth exists. Jackson, Mississippi, Black youth organizers pressure Maryland legislators to kill the president. CTU interest of the city head on hold series of town hall meetings to inform people of the political officials working to kill public education. Black and American organized politics was the center of the struggle. Ferguson all use more language. We should never even know the politics. People not come to a common understanding of the structure that makes sense. What the solution should be, although exposed to loving without having space to talk through issues in depth or a long period of time, building a capacity to govern the political decision, not busing people, organizing will not cause people to organize for themselves. That we already have the seeds for new system framework that reverse the economy and policy public interest. There are far more of us than we think using race wars. What? Okay. Yeah.
The race war is real and happening now. The actual weaponization of arms against black and brown bodies is the internal debate of clash of citizens represented by certain teams around us. Black communities getting the cops called on them for being their reason being two loud examples proves the uniqueness question, which goes considered the only mode of preservation associated with allows us to fuel through ourselves in opposition to militarization of logistics. This is planning at the social level. That's similar as they've considered the role of the judges to abolish the debate community because cross-racial affinity can only be found in moments in which we're able to connect and understand with the brokenness of black being, which comes as a prerequisite because of the way in which the procedures are structured in the first place. There's two kind of framing issues that should answer all of their case off. First they consider the theory of logistics, which overcodes it. It's a smoothing by a containerization and individuation of affect for circulation as capital creates and divides racial signifiers, which proves our argument. Their appeal to institutionality allows the smoothing of logistics that reinscribes on Cohen concedes. They've also conceded on the capital that it overcodes capital. Any kind of materialism arguments they go for is overcoded and is seen as a retreat in the overarching wave of whiteness, which overcodes all these arguments. This is proven, but we've made prerequisite arguments about how institutionality should be reimagined through planning, not procedures, in which recreates the social relations. That's a way to refuse the corrective logic of institutions themselves. Whiteness is the normative ground of institutions. The possibility of reform is a form of suspended futurity that ignores the surges and retreats of white being for those being subject to war. The first thing about circulating capital, nobody can the affect and Topicality itself can never be co-opted because it's not something that we appeal to institutionality, the community, and key materiality. No, one. It proves that there is no ground for you to engage in motive strategy. Second, it ignores the way in which sociality operates, which we've said is a prerequisite to increase the energy to engage in those political processes. In the first, the reclaiming debate-based arguments. So it's not a reclaiming, but reimagining sociality. Also, occupied failed because it engages, say, the neoliberal fugitive arguments. Now, one, you're completely wrong when you consider the logistics overcodes neoliberalism. Also, blackness is already. Blackness is always an already feature which is not unique. So arguments which they don't get any of their inventions that they go for. It's not mass privilege. We've already impacted on this. Second, Second is that the preventing material change arguments no are prerequisites to the psychic energy arguments. Also, the psychic energy arguments definitely answer the institution's key for black people needing to do things arguments proven by Moden's mother, who waited in line for 8 hours to receive healthcare but never received it in the first place. But psychic energy and sociality is able to create the energy to engage with those institutions in the first place. The form of some good arguments. No, micropolitics can't change this. And the arguments about micropolitics can't change this. No, we don't get caught because we have already made that argument that not getting caught to the finding cracks arguments. No, you can see the logistical sabotage arguments about how even if you find cracks, it ensures a smooth transition. Whereas where our arguments we're working about is in finding cracks within the code of logistics itself, which is the only way to resolve all the arguments that combining with politics arguments no, but they consider entanglement. Often said the entanglement often was the king evidence, which says that the way the entanglement often, which the king evidence, which says that it's not only racism out there, but racism in here. Sometimes we are the cops too. Incrementalism was impact terms of sociality. The loving fails arguments. No, it's not about topicalities in the context of neoliberalism, which already impact terms. The psychoanalysis, the Johnson evidence in the context of psychoanalysis, and the liberal economy difference is that theirs is the question of semiotics, whereas ours is relationality and how that's overcoded by logistics, which is the Beller evidence, which is a conceded thesis level claim. T. Examples for debate is a microcosm of the race organisms that you put procedurals on hold because our sole focus should be militancy against the internal protocol, which only the counterterm resolves at the level of form. Logistics proves form is content because it's infiltrated the cognitive linguistic protocols of the internal debate. The ballad does matter because in the neurological rewiring of energy towards the model, they're moved to logistics, which makes an independent psychic burnout. So that's their Ballard piece of evidence, which just proves all the debate doesn't shape subjectivity arguments, the white guilt argument. So it's not white guilt because we have a neurological war, and also if they can win that, they win over a series of debates and they conclude certain arguments, and we do too. Because over a series of debates, you can conclude that the race war is better, and we need to decide the best strategy to solve it. The put procedures in place arguments that we've impacted that with the race war. Also, the fact that you should just vote negative while still agreeing with the entirety of affirmative proves the argument about how proves that race war in debate about how people reward white debaters while they reward white debaters for doing absolutely nothing. The state engagement arguments, no relationality over because those are the Moden arguments that you can cross apply here. The affectual communities also solve all their healthcare offense, the counter-interpretation you can extend it here. AFS must defend militant strategies against the internal debate of these has 3 important arguments. One, militant debates are key for those living through the race war. The Shakitis evidence from the 1EC is our warrants as the these debates compare revolutionary strategies of the CPP, the BPP versus opportunities that is predictable since it structures the protocols of the internal debate. It doesn't devolve. Second, they also rely on extra resolutional practices like fiat to determine predictability, which proves that A is subjective. B, they pick and choose arbitrary norms to enforce, which doesn't preserve debatability, but their one idealized version. Erickson evidence was by policy debate making observations on norms, not the actual definition. So fiat is not necessary. Third is revolutionary agonism. Our uniqueness question means that resource here and you have to pick a side, which switching sides to play devil's advocate disavows. Our model creates revolutionary agonists that produce best subjects to fight the race war, which theirs cancel, which should be read in line with the role about arguments that also go concede to the notion that we can help people over there is fucking paternalistic and probably just turns all their other arguments, the fairness arguments, is a pretense of neutrality that upholds the internal debate. It's called to make debate great again, that preserves equilibrium in the face of black and brown students fighting for their lives, recreating microaggressions because it demarcates good debate versus bad debate, to keep antagonists in the debate while maintaining their left as a Wilderson evidence of truth testing. The idea of testing arguments are impacted by Hawthorne. Their demand for clash is not neutral, but feeds into a form of liberal multicultural. Their version of TV versus debate is essentially add black people and serve where meaningful dialogue is always decisive causes pathologization. The TV is not competitive. We said there's a paradigmatic imperative to only talk about the race war, even if it's possible to talk about the race war in your model. That's 1% around which can't resolve our office by creating militant structures. The Militant evidence institutionality is different from institutions itself. It's a question of sociality and relating to and how it's a prerequisite becomes a. And also the race war flips impact tactics. It's no longer a risk of limits explosion means you vote negative, but a risk that we're right about the race war means you vote after a model debate that only focused on militancy against internal debate. Also switch kids, not competitive. We affirm also can't resolve militancy because it's a question of apositionality, not oppositionality. Small schools, no, shut up, MBA.
Then case. We've internally turned all their militancy and skills arguments, and we've an extra impact of fairness, equal access to the ballot, key to the function of debate itself, and it's the only thing stopping teams from cutting erosion to the margin to avoid clash. That comes prior to an intrinsic good. They can see not only does competition, pre-round and research all rely on a competitive incentive to win, but also every argument we make in debate, it can't be inextricably linked from fairness because they rely on you adjudicating their arguments fairly, which means our model solves their offense, but over the long term, you should prioritize competition in the Naviland blind. They say it's a microcosm. If it's a microcosm, we should orient ourselves to the reason that's a microcosm in the first place is overall institutions. They can see that their only incentive to innovate is because there's fairness, which means our arguments are a prerequisite to changing his pay. They say form as content. The resolution doesn't overturn form. That was examples given the 2NC that they dropped. They linked to that insofar as they presented evidence in a Western form. They say ballot. Yes, over the course of a season, we can change our perspective. That only comes about through in-depth clash. Our resolution provides that their motto eviscerates, but one ballot cannot do that insofar as it rationalizes our investment in the status quo. Doesn't have to do anything to change institutions. We're not extending the vote negative vote argument, so it can't be offense. They say state rationality. They can win every single argument on case about the state being irredeemable, but they flat drop the bomb to the 2NC that even if we want to oppose the state outside the states, we still need to know how it works, i.e. black immigrants targets, avoiding deportation, knowing when the police come around to the buildings, know what rights they have. Even if we want to avoid the state and challenge and adopt a position of antagonism, we still need to know how it works, which means that we've internally turned all their offense, their counter-interpretation. Our interpretation is that you should defend the hypothetical and acme of reducing arms sales. All their counter-interpretation linked to all of our offense. First is limit to and endorse any strategy of militancy. There's no definition of what that is, which means queer militancy, indigenous militancy, all linked. There are an infinite number of movements that you can endorse and say that's an example, which lowers the burden to be negative to such an extent that it outpaces negative preparation. Second is ground. They don't defend arms sales, which is the core question of the resolution. They can see that to the extent that there is literature about their subject, it's superficial because it's all played out by the first topic. There's reciprocal literature about USFG. Third is predictability. They dropped all of our definition, which means even if their topic is limited, it's not predictable because it doesn't define DCS and FMS, which are the governmental arms sales. They've also dropped it doesn't solve militancy. They can see that devolves into a kind of a superficial debate about peaceful versus militancy, which kind of precludes effective strategies over specific arms, specific policies that are not more effective. They say living through warfare. They have no warrant for accessibility, but they can see that the state is a form of the fact they've given examples that the state is a form of the race war, i.e. police shootings is an example that proves that orienting ourselves to how to combat that allows people who are living through the race war to engage with our resolution model. They say it's extra topical. The fact that they've defined should as ought proves that imagining what the USFG should do is part of the resolution. Also, the Erickson evidence is describing debate and says that part of the resolutional debate is imagining what the USFG should do. Either way, they imagine fiat under their model, and so do we. They say agonism, disavowal goes negative. The reason that we should question what other people think about our model is why we should is the reason that it makes effective strategy, i.e. the example of Malcolm X going conceded that thinking about what white racists should do made his advocacy more effective. What we say in debate isn't what we believe, but over the course of a year, if they're so right about the race war, meaning the state is irredeemable, we'll come to believe it, but they can see that's net better because it means that white racists are able to internalize that instead of just being lectured at by Coppell. They say it's paternalistic. It's more paternalistic to tell black movements that are organizing now that the state is irredeemable that they should just throw their hands up and concede. They say fairness. They concede fairness as a value is good. The reason that racism is bad is because it disproportionately targets racial targeting, which is ground up in the logic of fairness. It's also good in debate because a limited topic is the only thing stopping big schools from breaking apps, which disproportionately maximizes the resource disparity because big schools like MBA and GBN with no limit could just break infinite apps. They say Hawthorne, it's not multiculturalism, but the idea that the only way that we can learn about the topic and learn about race war is if we have the stasis point to be able to question our assumptions. They say TVA doesn't solve because it's 1% of the race war, but the burden they've lowered on their offense is just discussing the race war. They can see that AFRICOM is part of the race war insofar as it's a militarization of Africa that directly kills black people, that allows for discussion of race war and proves that their literature isn't mutually exclusive. It's not a counterplan, but provides inroads to their offense with a net benefit of clash. And even if those debates aren't as specific as the AF, they still allow engagement from both sides, so they're more educational. Case. The role of the judges who decide the better debating that was impacted out on a framework, and their interpretation is arbitrary and self-serving, which was all of this stuff on their counter-interpretation. The thesis of irredeemability, don't just check out on this. First is that our model is still good because we resist the state even if it's irredeemable. That was on the framework page. Second is a flat drop the Spence argument. Logistics don't overdetermine activism to such an extent that reform is possible. The evidence gives the example of reform in Mississippi and Maryland that materially improved the lives of black people and stopped police brutality through things like body cams, i.e. that logistics don't overdetermine reformism to such an extent that black life can't be improved through institutionality. They have no explanatory power for those examples that the one error doesn't even mention. You should prefer specificity because although they might be theoretically persuasive, our evidence gives the example of black youth activists and BLM activism not only changed white racist minds, but were able to improve the conditions of humanity in the first place. The co-option stuff and the cap stuff, we weren't going for a cap of corruption argument. We were going for an argument about how a prerequisite is an infinite palliative that discourages and precludes material action insofar as there are infinite prerequisites, but we should organize in the here and now. The healthcare example, they might give black people energy to wait for 8 hours, but our argument is that we should change those structures so black people don't have to wait at all. Their form of relationality in community organism is a neoliberal wet dream insofar as it rationalizes our investment in the quo and precludes material action around broader institutions, which are the reasons that we need relationality in the first place.
Is anybody not ready?
They conceded for 4 straight speeches. The race war is real and happening now. The external weaponization of arms against black and brown bodies is the internal debate consciousness refusal to invite certain teams to round robins. Black communities giving the cops called on them, their music being too loud, all to prove the uniqueness question. We have no choice but to adopt militancy as a method to revitalize insurgent energy within white being. The case debate will come down to what is the best strategy to endure the race war. Frame this debate through the role of Balmont and Harney says we have a categorical imperative only to direct our energies towards abolishing the white debate community. That means it's good for it to be arbitrary and self-serving because we have the utmost priority to understand the way that we relate to each other and sociality is better to allow us to endure and navigate into my practice system, which is the only method and the route for how you should come to understand the race war in the first place. If we win the race wars real and happy now, we'd say flat out concede it should guide your decision because none of their arguments matter insofar the sole purpose of debate should be militant strategy. That means that even if they win their institutions offense, none of theirs is impacted out in the context of debate and how debate gets us those skills to combat the race war. This means that how we relate to each other is a prerequisite for the way that we gain the social energy to engage institutions in the first place. Second is racial relations. Their model of debate does nothing to overcome the code that racism has shifted to. The Watuner has conceded that racial terror no longer operates through the political and material violence, but rather, quote, the social sphere that is affected by neurological processes, which goes conceded from the one is he imagining the United States federal government do something round after round might give white debaters the skills to do something good for themselves, but it continues to let violence happen to black debaters here now only voting out prioritized debate as a community rather than as an activity that's simply a game that's key for black and brown students that are fighting for their lives. The argument about that you should be able to resist those states, one, they've conceded that there's no internal link between debate and being able to get those skills to resist the states. Only debates over militancy are good because they allow us to grapple with how the race war affects us in debate. This is a debate about debate, which means that all their arm cells good focus doesn't apply. Second is that they've conceded their vision of the topic is equally likely to conclude that debaters result in arm cells being good, which is not an anti-militarist project. Their argument about the specific examples, they've conceded that logistics operates in waves. It's a trick of time that you have a cognitive bias to believe that, look, specificity, look, something is good, but it's counteracted with violence. You should remember that moment in Crossix during the 1AC that body cams did nothing to stop the police shooting that happened 2 weeks ago. There's a question of re-articulated violence, which means activist community forming can only happen with the bodily energy that is created by the act. The change in structure, they've conceded it's impossible to create those forms of healthcare, but creating care for each other is better because it allows us to endure the conditions of the race war at the T proper. Debate is a microcosm of the race war, saying we shouldn't change institutions within it. It's a bad model debate. A couple of impact terms are mishandled. First is individuation. Their model debate actively encourages distancing, which is the king evidence that goes conceded, and the two are in our their form of certain politics, that there's a race war out there. It allows us, it doesn't let us to realize that we are the cops. Sometimes we are the problem. Only the ass model debate solves it because it solves violent touch at the level of engaging the system of logistic and allows us the process to continue in the first place. Their arguments about having an equal process and you also being embedded in fairness. Their beg for fairness during a race war is white pacification. It proves that regardless of the benefits of whiteness, we'll always want to just preserve the game for sake of a game. Look, it's pretty good. You should rather put procedurals on hold to create a model of debate that creates strategies for endurance. The argument about you use fairness, there's a distinction. Your use of fairness is to preserve the game. It's not the same as evidence comparison or comparing strategies. The Sheriff and Graber evidence from the 1AC says that comparison of using different forms of evidence to evaluate what is the best militant strategy is a good model of debate because it allows us to come to the conclusion of how we should fight the race war. The question about one ballot doesn't change. You consider our theory of our linguistic project that says the code overdetermines how our neurological functions value over time, or it does change the way that debate should shape out. We're taught to top 10 things of the nation. It shapes the community norms. The second argument about you get to oppose states and learn about deportation. First of all, this is not the immigration topic. You get no offense to learning about the systems of arms sales. There's no way that learning about the AFRICOM program that the TVA subscribes allows us to gain skills that challenge healthcare. You should view the internal link debate really skeptically because none of their offense about the TVA actually gets those skills to challenge deportation in the first place. The argument about limits, they've conceded that limits explosion is that you should flip your calculus of limits explosion in the test code. No, it's no longer a race of the risk of limits explosion, you vote negative, but a risk that we're right about the race war means you vote aft for a model debate that only focuses on militancy. The counter interpretation extended here, the ass must defend a strategy of militancy against the internal debate of DCS, FMS, predictability. We are predictable. The race war is most predictable for black and brown students fighting for their lives. Who the fuck cares about the resolution? The next argument of the state is a form of a race war. You've conceded that the state can't reform anything, and those skills don't get genuine. The TVA, one, you concede it's not a form of militant strategies. Militant strategies, as per the Schraber and caucus evidence, is those that affect us and how we relate in those spaces. It's a question of distancing politics and how we relate to each other. It doesn't create any forms of relation. You should ask yourself, what about debating AFRICOM out there creates the relations for how we're able to endure on here? It doesn't change political discussions because they're overcoded by logistics.
Debate.